Hello, everyone. Shall we make a start? Thank you for joining us at this new installment of the ENPSIT webinar series. First of all, let me point out that this webinar is being recorded, as always the case, so that also people that are unable to attend will be able to view it later on. Yes. In this installment, the theme is training approaches to public service interpreting in refugee contexts with languages of lesser diffusion. There is a lot to unpack there. It's about training approaches, it's about public service interpreting, it's about refugee contexts, and about languages of lesser diffusion. So many different aspects converge here in one single theme. One single theme, not entirely, because there is so much to unpack, we found two colleagues willing to present to you because there are two exciting projects that they would like to share the findings of with you. One is Sonja Pöllabauer from the University of Vienna, who worked on an Erasmus Plus project with the title, brace yourself, Working with Interpreters in Refugee Transit Zones, Capacity Building and Awareness Raising for Higher Education Contexts. Even more to unpack. But in short, it's called ReTrans, basically. So Sonja will be talking about that project. And then we also have Carmen Pena of the University of Alcalá, who will be talking about communication in public service interpreting and translating with languages of lesser diffusion, in short, Dialogos. These two are complementary yet highly related projects, so we thought it good to join them in one single seminar. The program for today is that we'll start with ReTrans, and then we'll move on to Dialogos, and then we will open up the floor for questions, answers, and discussion to all of you, if that is all right by you. Then, without any further ado, allow me to pass the floor to Sonja.
Hello everyone, and thanks, Lieven, for the introduction and for the invitation. I'm really happy to share what we did in our project and to show you some results. I have a presentation I'd like to share. Oh, you need to, Lieven, allow me to share it.
Done.
Yep. Yes. So you should be able to see my slides now. Does this work for you? Okay, great. So as Lieven already mentioned, the acronym is ReTrans of our project, and it's basically focuses on training approaches for languages of limited diffusion in a refugee context. And the acronym is based on our working title that was Working with Interpreters in Refugee Transit Zones, Capacity Building and Awareness Raising for Higher Education Contexts. This was the full title, and ReTrans, the acronym for interpreting in refugee transit zones, which was our main focus. As you can see here on this slide, University of Vienna was the lead for this project, but we had several partner universities. You can see the logos of all of them, and I will show you a bit later more about those partners. The outline for what I'd like to show you today is basically provide you with background information about the project, why we did it and what we did, and show you some of the results, and also tell you a bit about dissemination, because this was, in our view, a tricky part. And this is something we can also, if you're interested, take up in the question and answer session. So basically, what was the project about? It took place between 2022 and 24. We officially completed the project this summer. So everything we did and the results are basically brand new. It's an educational project, and it was co-funded by Erasmus Plus. I think most of you will know this funding program. And as with all Erasmus Plus projects, the main focus had to be on university education. So it's really something we try to produce material and to focus on the topic with universities and their needs and the needs of interpreter and training departments on our minds. The main idea behind the project was to focus on exchange between teachers, students, interpreters in the field, and the different kinds of stakeholders we have in the field besides interpreters. The background why we started the project, why we applied for this project under Erasmus Plus was basically, we all know we have been faced with several humanitarian crises over the last few years, something that has been tackled in interpreting studies also under a key word of crisis translation. And all of these situations require communication. We all know this, of course, communication and translation beyond national borders. Because people, if they leave their home countries, move across different countries until they finally arrive in a host country. So there is plenty of communication and translation and interpreting need along the entire migration path. And we felt that this is something that this specific focus on those refugee routes and also on what takes place between a home country and the host country is something that has been tackled in research, of course, but it is not as much present in university university interpreter training. And we felt that students and teachers might need a bit more material and information on that. So that was basically the gist of what we aimed at. And this idea of establishing exchange, getting people to focus on that topic, introducing what is already there and providing material that can be used also later on in class and for workshops and for awareness raising. That was something top on our agenda. And here let me go back. And here on this map, you can see the countries of our project partners. So we have University of Vienna, we were the lead. Then one of our partners was University of Maribor. We have another Austrian university as a project partner that focused mostly on a game design approach. I will tell you about that later. And helped us with the technical side of the project. Then we cooperated with the Ionian University in Greece and University of Skopje in North Macedonia. And from these countries, you can also already I guess you can guess why we have these partners, because all of those partners are somewhere in a place that lies along one of those main migration routes on the Mediterranean migration route. So that was something that was really interesting for us also to try to include those different perspectives, those different national perspectives. That's something I already mentioned, this context of migration. This does not only affect us as interpreters, and if I say interpreters, we also all know that there are different kinds of interpreters who are active in this field. It's not only just trained interpreters, but there are also lay interpreters working in this field, or interpreters with not university training, but some other kinds of training or awareness raising. But there are also other important stakeholders, and their perspective is also really important. And that is also something we tried to integrate in this project to make sure to have as many different perspectives and angles on this topic. So there is the refugee perspective we also tried to include. There is the perspective of NGOs, of public authorities, of administrative bodies, of police authorities, and of different kinds of aid organizations who all work with interpreters, who all need translation and interpreting in different settings and at different stages. So this is a very it's a field that is a very broad field with not just one setting. So there's a lot of there are differing expectations, you could say, and different profiles and role profiles that are needed, and that are not always clear to all of the stakeholders. So this idea of raising awareness for these different expectations and needs and profiles, that was something that was one of our aims. Also among our students and among colleagues and teachers, because this is also sometimes, we felt that when we talked with colleagues, this is also something not everyone knew much about this topic. So we thought for those who work as trainers and educators in a university context, this is also something that's good to know, that's important to also be able to discuss in class. We know that across Europe, interpreter training institutes have different profiles too. Conference interpreting still, of course, is very much present, but there are also other universities that have focused more extensively on different fields of dialogue interpreting. But even those who paid more attention to dialogue interpreting, we felt that there is more need for more specific information and material on this concrete context. And basically the idea behind all of this and how our materials can be used is that in the future hopefully we can contribute at least to a small degree to increase the quality of communication and interpretation in such contexts. So what I'd like to zoom in on now briefly is to show you the training materials we developed. And basically we have these 4 main categories you see here on the slides. And I'll walk you through all of these very briefly. I will start with the survey, then I will tell you about our podcasts and videos, and then about the games we produced. Before doing this, I'd acknowledge the contribution by the entire ReTrans team. I speak in their name today, and I won't list all of them, but you can see the names and see everyone who was involved from the partner universities in the project. I can't name all of the interviewees and all of the people and stakeholders in the field with whom we had contacts, but there are many of them. And we are very grateful for their for the insight they provided us with. So about the training materials, first the survey. This is just something I don't want to go into detail here, but just that you know, we divided the whole project into different kinds of work packages and they which were built upon each other. So we started with the first work package where we did a survey spread among the different stakeholders and mentioned in all our countries to get some general picture and see what the problems were. Basically, the results can be summarized as everything we already knew from research. Role confusion, different kinds of expectations, different kinds of profile, and a very, very strong need for improving the quality, to paying closer attention to interpreter recruitment, interpreter training, also languages of limited diffusion, and how to work with these. So all the challenges we thought that would be present were confirmed by this survey. We have a survey report on our website if you're interested. So based on this survey, we then went into the field and we did interviews, all of the partners, with many people. I won't give you the full numbers now, but each partner tried to get in touch with relevant stakeholders in their own national context. And we did interviews with those partners, and these interviews, they were transcribed and recorded, of course, and everything we gleaned from these interviews that was used then in work package 2 and 3 to produce podcast materials and vodcasts. Vodcasts are like video podcasts where we also have people on video to make it more visual. These interviews were with representatives from all of the groups I mentioned, and here on the slide you can see some of the organizations also, like for instance, not surprisingly, Red Cross or UNHCR or different kinds of ministries, crisis management centers, and other organizations where these stakeholders we spoke to work at. And these pod and vodcasts we then produced. We took a list or we organized them around some main topics that you can see here on this slide. One of those was the challenges, basically, for communicating in such a context. Then a important topic was empathy, that was mentioned repeatedly. So this was something we wanted to focus on in another specific podcast, and how you can go about working with interpreters if you are in need of an interpreter as an institutional representative. Also skills and competencies that are needed in this context was something that were the main topic of another one, and demands and possible solutions, and also how different kinds of NGOs work in this context and what challenges they perceive. Here this is a screenshot from our website, and towards the end of my presentation, I'd like to show you also the website. Here you can filter all the different kinds of materials we have, and you can see we have here vodcasts, training videos, and podcasts. And you can filter, some of them are a mixture between English, German, and other languages, but we always have subtitles in English, so it's usable for everyone, even if you don't know the languages. This is something that is open access and that can be used by anyone who is interested in the topic, and we feel that it is something that is very usable also for seminars, workshops, or university courses, where you can show students what is going on in the field, basically, and it gives you plenty of material for reflection and to think about these different kinds of challenges, and also see how these topics are important for interpreter training and what trained interpreters can do in this context, but also what this means for non-professional interpreters, and how we as trained interpreters or as educators of interpreters can make sure that their is more cooperation between also trained and non-trained interpreters, and cooperation between ourselves and the other stakeholders in the field. Then the next step was we used all of these materials and the information we gained from the interviews to produce so-called interactive stories, we called them, and this is a game-based approach. And here the expertise of the University for Continuing Education at Krems in Austria was very important for us, because they have a special department on game studies. And the idea behind this was to produce materials that help users and teachers, students, anyone who is interested, to help users to walk them through different kinds of scenarios that are potentially difficult, kind of dilemma situations where you as an interpreter have to take a decision, which very often is not an easy black and white decision or a yes and no decision, but where you have to do something in a difficult situation, and depending on what you do and how you interact with the other participants in the field, the situation might evolve differently then. So that's basically the idea behind it. And this approach is called a storytelling approach in game studies, meaning that behind these scenarios there are real stories, real scenarios, and depending on what kind of decision you as a player of this game take, the story evolves differently. And when you arrive at the end of this game, you can then restart and take like a different route of decision and see what different kind of end scenario you might arrive at. So that's the idea, to repeatedly go through these options you may have, different kind of options you may have in different kinds of scenarios, and see what is needed, which kinds of decisions are needed, and which kinds of possible solutions you may have. The idea is to show students also that you need to be aware of how difficult it sometimes may be to take a decision, and that it is not always not always such a clear-cut yes and no, and that sometimes you have to work out things with the other stakeholders and interactants in the field. So this is the list of stories we covered, and all of these stories, they are really based on scenarios and ideas and stories we were given by the different stakeholders in the field. We named them after people, so they all have names from Ali to Timor, and they in the stories we also cover different topics. Here you can see a list of topics. And the stories have different degrees of complexity, we call it. Some of them are, you can play them rather fast, and others need more time. But by needing more time, they also offer more material for discussion. And this again is something that is open access, and it can be used for in-class training. And it's a very rich material we found for getting students and teachers and colleagues to discuss things and to think about things, and to discuss ethical decision making in dilemma situations. Yeah. I think I already told you most of what we have on this slide. So the focus is really, what was important to us is, yes, we all, of course, have our ethical guidelines. We as trained interpreters, and this is also something our students know about, but this is not something other interactants in the field always know about. So this focus is that this to show to show students and users of these games that sometimes it's really difficult to take this decision between right and wrong, and there is sometimes it's very blurred, and there is gray area, and this gray area are the topics where we really have to think about, and where you have to have a very high awareness of what kinds of option you might potentially have here. So all the training materials are open access, as I said, and available on our website. And we tried in those 2 years where we had the project, we had plenty of workshops and discussions and a lecture series. And all of the partners we really tried to get in touch with, stakeholders in the field, and to disseminate our materials. So this chance today to tell you about what we did is also a kind of dissemination activity for us, because we hope that you take a look at our website and feel that you can use some of it. For our dissemination, we also, on our website, we had blog entries. This is something we tried, and we also tried to start a sorry, I don't have it here, but we tried to use a kind of forum, which was a Discord server-based communication chat room, which we wanted to open to anyone interested. This, however, was something that was not as successful as we had hoped. So this is something about project dissemination for anyone who is involved in project. This is something, if you're thinking of doing something, you might need a clearer plan of how to use different kinds of social media and chat rooms and forums to get people involved. What we also did is we worked with students, groups of students. This is something I have not yet mentioned. Apart from those video podcasts, we also have a number of more traditional podcasts, which were done by students who also in one of our courses that was offered under this project at the University of Vienna, really went into the field and found very interesting interview partners, and this was also used for this project, and you can listen to all of those podcasts also on our homepage. And one other result we have that may be useful is a book, a collective volume, which again tackles the topics I mentioned from different perspectives. It's available. It was published through a German publisher, Frank and Timme. It's a mixture between English and German papers, contributions, and it's also available open access. The picture you see here on the slide and which was on the book cover was also something that was developed within the project. It's a painting by or a hand drawing basically by a student, which she did as kind of her portfolio work, and she allowed us to use it. So if you're interested in the results, you can go on our homepage, and I'd like to quickly open it. So this, I hope you can see it now. Yeah, this is the homepage. You get all of the background information about the project here, and the training materials which I presented you can find under training materials, and this opens the list of the different kinds of podcasts and whatcasts. For instance, here are the video podcasts. They are on YouTube also, but you can, the best way is to open them through the project website. And here is the list of the student podcasts, if you want to listen to them. And the stories can be opened under interactive stories. And I'll just quickly show you how this works. We don't have the time to really play them now, but if you click on the story, you go to play story, and then it always works in a similar format. You get some kind of scenario, you read through it, and then you take a decision. The decision you feel is the most adequate one, for instance, this one, and then you get more text and have to take another decision. You pick one, and depending, this was an easy one, and I didn't really read what I clicked now, but obviously I did it right, because if you or I chose a solution that makes sense in this scenario, though obviously it might not be the only solution. And if you do something that makes sense, or that would be one of the available options, you get a nice picture. And if you choose a different line of decision, you might get a picture that is a bit scrambled. So basically, I think that's the main ideas, or the main things I wanted to share with you today. So if you have any questions, please. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to tell you about our ReTrans project.
Thank you very much, Sonja, for this wealth of information and especially wealth of materials. I think this is extremely useful, as we can also see in the comments in the chat zone of Zoom. As I said earlier, happy to take questions, but preferably after also the second presentation, because I'm sure that Carmen Pena also has lots to tell us about Dialogos. Carmen, the floor is yours.
Hello. Well, thank you also for bringing us here together. I think this will be very interesting, because after listening to Sonja, our projects are similar with a different perspective, but I think we need to work on that much more because I think we can do lots of things to improve. Okay, I'm going to share oops. I don't know if I'm sharing the correct thing. Is there a PowerPoint? Because I can't see what I'm sharing.
Yes, there is a PowerPoint, but it's not in, yes, now it's in presenter mode, or presentation.
So, as Lieven said, I'm going to be talking about communication in public service, interpreting and translating with languages of lesser diffusion. As you can see, Sonja was calling it languages of limited diffusion. So we already have different terms there, I'm sure, for very similar concepts. And this is also an Erasmus Plus project. So it's also co-funded by the European Union. And the University of Alcalá was the lead. So I'm also going to be talking about what we've been doing. This was a 3-year project. So we began right in the middle of ReTrans. So we're going to finish it this year. We began in 2022. And basically, our starting point was the same as with ReTrans, that we wanted to help or to find solutions to the linguistic assistance and migration problems, especially for gateways in the Mediterranean, such as Greece, Italy, and Spain. So we thought that those 3 countries would have very similar needs. And the 3 universities that worked together in this project, we thought that multicultural, multilingual professionals have to be available to deal with communication problems when migrants arrive into Europe. basically what we had seen from literature and from our experience was that although in academia we talk about interpreting and the all sorts of theoretical issues, but what we find when we actually go to the arrival points is that who is actually doing the interpreting, if there is such interpreting, it's normally non-professional interpreters, because in the end they do actually do the work. Mainly volunteers, in the best of cases from NGOs, and they would include professionals, but sometimes many other themes can take place, and we'll talk about that in a little while. So we thought that there was a need for this project, and what we thought that there was a more of a specific need was to have some sort of course for those non-professional interpreters, to give them some sort of guidelines, basic principles, talk about ethical issues, and give them a very maybe summarized and basic training, but something that they could at least have to carry on working with minimal training, but something that could be fast and, well, effective, we hope. So the universities working in this project are Alcalá, the University of Genoa in Italy, and Aristotle University in Thessaloniki in Greece. And each of us worked with an NGO. So it was the K220, I think it's called, partnership with associations. So I'll be talking about what we found. As I said, after researching literature, and I think all of us here have researched this topic, and we know how the communication barriers and the linguistic challenges that migrants have when they arrive to their host countries hinder equality and integration. They sometimes don't have access to public services. Now, one of the main topics we talked about from the very beginning was the term languages of lesser diffusion, limited diffusion. Basically, what we defined it as languages for which it's more difficult to find support, either with written material, resources, interpreters, whatever you may find in, let's say, other languages or larger languages. Normally this changes from one geographical area to another. So maybe in Germany, Turkish is not such a language of lesser diffusion because there's lots of material, whereas in Spain it might be. We found lots of differences with Greece, for example, where they had less material in many languages. So that is very changing, and it differs from one place to the other. The first thing we started by doing in the project was to try and establish relationship, as Sonja was saying before, especially with associations and the people who are out there in the field, let's say. And this is before starting the project, I actually thought it would be much easier, but it's quite difficult to maintain a solid relationship with them. One of our main issues was also researching and looking for all the material that had been created in this area. And we found lots of material, but maybe not adapted to languages of lesser diffusion. So sometimes it's general, but it's always combined with English, with French, with German. So let's say the large languages. And we also wanted to find out what was going on outside, let's say, academia, to go out there and see what's going on in the field. As far as the training programs, we found that there are many programs that are interdisciplinary with a general approach, but some of the related settings that we needed, we were looking at health, we were looking at refugees, asylum, police settings, and we didn't find that much material in that would help us. It's a shame that we were working on this at the same time because ReTrans does have lots of material that I'm sure we will use. So that's great. And of course, what we basically found is that the languages of lesser diffusion are underrepresented. So there might be material with Spanish, with English, but not with Wolof, not even with Arabic or Chinese, etc. We didn't find that many courses specifically concerning translation and interpreting for public services. Basically a one-year course in linguistic assistance at Bologna and our own master's degree in Alcalá. And I'm referring to the use of languages of lesser diffusion. Of course, there are many with English, with French, etc., but not even with, let's say, with Spanish and Arabic, Chinese and Spanish, etc. We reviewed materials and we took what we thought would help us to develop our own course. And on the other hand, to map what was going on in Italy, Greece, and Spain, we made surveys addressed to young languages of lesser diffusion speakers. So basically students or young people from different associations and NGOs who have come to Spain or to Italy or to Greece in let's say from about 5 years and who spoke Spanish or Greek or Italian and their other language. The most interesting thing for us was that most of them don't even talk about their, let's say, dialects or their languages of lesser diffusion. So you ask somebody from, for example, Mali, to tell you which languages they speak, and they'll say French, and they completely avoid to say Bambara, or which is actually the language that we need to have right now in Spain for interpreting with incoming migrants. So this was actually quite difficult to get to them because they don't consider those languages as important as, let's say, English or French or Spanish, German, whatever. We also interviewed and surveyed professionals from health sector and legal sector because we wanted to know what they thought about all of this. As far as the student surveys, I'm not really going to go into this, but basically what we found was that many of these, let's say, heritage or languages of lesser diffusion, young people were actually interpreting, maybe just for family or for friends, but they were doing this, but they had not received training in any of the countries. And but most of them you see there in the second column, 62%, 50% in another country, and 57%, they had all acted as interpreters or translators. And most of them said that they would be very interested in carrying out training in this area. So something that they hadn't thought of. As for the professionals who had also in some way interpreted in any of the languages they might know, even using English as, let's say, as a pilot language, of course, they had never received training and didn't know how to work with interpreters. But something which we thought was very interesting was to ask them what they thought would be interesting or successful strategies to deal with language barriers. And what they thought was they actually talked about having interpreters, intercultural mediators, etc. But after them, what they mainly said was that they preferred to have a family member, some other person from their staff who would interpret. Lots of them talked about how they use body language or they use a vehicular language, etc. And what we are finding out at the moment, because this was carried out in 2023, but I think everything's changing towards automatic translation tools. So what doctors are saying that they use now when they have a patient whose language, who doesn't know the host language, for example, in Spanish, they use Google Translate, and that's their main strategy, let's say. So when we found after doing the survey, we interviewed some of those participants, and we saw what we already figured, that refugees, migrants, illiterate people, and elderly all had greater difficulties accessing public services. And especially that they didn't know how the healthcare system worked, how the legal system worked. So it wasn't just the linguistic issue, but also administrative, just knowing how things work in the host language, not to talk about other cultural issues and challenges. So we thought that our training course had to rely on practice rather than theory, and that we had to take special account into the legal, health, and education sectors. So once we analyzed all the material we found, we designed a course, created material, and we wanted to pilot that. We wanted to have an interactive type of training with practical activities for bilingual and bicultural students who were proficient in at least 2 languages. And the final product, which we're working on at the moment, is an online training course. The material, how we designed it, we began by thinking of what would be useful for them. So, for example, to explain what public service interpreting and translation is, who they would be helping, what they would be doing as a PSIT worker, what they needed to know, and what was essential for them to know. For example, we thought of healthcare and humanitarian settings, police and court settings, etc. And the competences we wanted to make sure were included all had to do with the EMT competences, and basically to have them understand the specific settings, the context, the procedures and protocols, also being aware of the different cultural backgrounds, the different cultural nonverbal communication strategies, and the ethical implications, which was something that we thought was very much needed, especially for non-professional interpreters, of course. So this is how we constituted our course, let's say. We began talking about how important their bilingualism was, because we found that it wasn't for them. They didn't think their languages were important, as I said, so they hadn't even considered turning their non-professional work, let's say, into something professional with further training, etc. So we especially talked about how they could improve and train to perhaps become professionals in this area. And we created 6 modules. Modules 2 and 1 are mostly theory-based, and then the rest of the modules are more practical and hands-on. with different sort of elements. As far as the piloting we did, we began by, well, to create the course, we began by creating scripts because we had to take into account that everything would have to be translated. Well, this was from Work Package 3. It was all created in Spanish, but of course it would have to be then translated into Greek, Italian, and also English. We created scripts which we then turned into PowerPoints because we were at first going to pilot this presentially in a presential course. And these were the students who participated. The idea was to test the material that we had created and see if this could be well, if this type of student would find it useful. We contacted lots of institutions to find out if they had people who were interested in the course, and we actually got a very positive feedback there. We had to reduce the number of students because there were so many who really wanted to participate. We thought of having the languages with a critical need right now in Spain for interpreters. There are no professional or hardly any professional interpreters, for example, in languages such as Wolof, Bambara, Fula, Swahili, etc. So those were the languages we were aiming for. And in the end, we ended up with 17 students from those languages. Many of them were refugees. Some of them had arrived in Spain, let's say in 3 or 4 years, but there are also some heritage second generation speakers. Of course, they were very different, but it was very interesting to see the different needs as well. So the on-site pilot course took place last March, and we had to do this during weekends because most of them worked and couldn't really arrive to their training unless it was during the weekend. And the learning environment, as you can see, well, it was a classroom where we had different activities and we got them. I don't know if you can hear it, but in any case, just an example of what we did. Very interesting to see that, for example, our association, Fundación Abrazando Ilusiones, created a video using artificial intelligence, and this is just an anecdote, but they didn't like it at all. And it was actually, well, it was a very short video, but it didn't work at all. They preferred presential classes where we had all sorts of different activities. For example, dynamic questions. We were always asked them. We asked them a lot about their personal experiences. This is something that they really enjoyed and that they all learned from. We also had, of course, sight translation. We had collaborative terminological work where they each use their own languages. Revision of concepts just to check whether they were understanding what we were doing. Lots of joint learning and sharing with, especially with different cultural conflict situations, dilemmas, etc. Also, reflection activities where we talked about different stereotypes. I think this sort of activity helped us to understand them and them to understand also their host society, because sometimes there are many issues along those lines. We introduced reflection activities such as different cases where they had to reflect on, and of course, interpreting practice. Whenever we had two students with the same language, we asked them to interpret and of course start doing different role plays. After the piloting, we evaluated each of the sessions, and basically we got very positive feedback. These students are, many of them, they're not students as such. They were just taking our course as, let's say, something that they were doing as not as a hobby, of course, but they didn't think of this as a professional, in a professional way. They were completely different to our normal university students. They participated much more. They were much more eager. They did all their homework. They were excellent students. They liked all the audiovisual resources, and they found the specialized terms and concepts, of course, very difficult. This would probably be very different to our university students. And what we found was that it was very interesting how they interacted between them and with us. And we got very positive feedback from the students who found the material very useful, and we thought that that material could be recycled. And this was the last stage of our project, which is where we're at right now. The challenge is we want to turn this presential material into online training. We've started doing that, and it's very challenging because, of course, in a presential environment, you can see the students, you see how they react. It's more interactive, whereas with online training, this is sometimes very difficult. I found some of the material from ReTrans very interesting because I think that could be very useful. And because, of course, it has to be as interactive as possible. We need to facilitate the access to independent research because they're very highly committed, but it's difficult to create the material. What we achieved from the presential course is that we certified students with the University of Alcalá certification. And actually, there are 6 who have got jobs in different interpreting companies, and there were 9 who attended another much more, a longer course, a 3 months course, training them in the health sector. So that was very interesting. And we are now working on adapting that material, as I said, and also translating it into the different languages. We also want to create a good practice guide. And if I may, because we already have some of just 2 of the modules that we finished in Spanish and English, they're not yet open access because we're still working on them. But if I can just have 5 minutes, I don't know, Lieven, if we have time, just to show a little bit of one of the modules we've made.
Well, we've already used up all of our time, but I'm sure that people will be interested in seeing this if they can stay on for another couple of minutes.
Okay. So let me know if you can see it and hear it. Can you see something that says who will I be helping?
Yes.
Okay, so this would be module 2.
Welcome to the second module of the course on translation and interpretation in public services and humanitarian emergencies. My name is Paul, and I will guide you through this module where we will explore the various contexts in which translation and interpretation professionals play a key role: public services and humanitarian emergency situations. Before we begin, I want to ask you, how would you define public services? To answer the question, we will carry out a brief exercise which will help us reflect on what public services we used this week. Look at the activities on the right and try to find the corresponding public service in the left column. While doing this, think about which of these services you have used during the past week.
Okay, I'm just going to go ahead. Of course, this will be completely wrong, but it doesn't work unless I submit.
Public services include a series of services and goods that the state offers their population with the aim of providing a better standard of living and protecting equality of opportunity. Basic public services include healthcare, education, public safety, and legal services.
Here, for example, we have different, principles that they could read. So we tried to, as I said, these two first modules are
Now
more
that we have reviewed the core
theoretical.
principles of public services, let's look at the role of translation and interpretation. When a user accesses a public service, it is essential that they can communicate with the service workers to exercise their rights and access their benefits. But how can they do this if they do not speak the language of the country they are in, or if they face cultural barriers? Translation and interpretation play a key role in ensuring equitable access to public services for all people, regardless of their mother tongue or place of origin. The importance of translation and interpretation lies in several key aspects. As a translator and interpreter in public services, you will ensure that speakers of languages of lesser diffusion have equitable access to services. Your work will be crucial not only for access to services, but also for their proper use. Let's see an example. Imagine that a patient you are interpreting for, whose mother tongue is Wolof, receives this prescription from the doctor treating them. Next, we will go over what can be done in this situation.
Again, we have interactive.
Not quite. It is important that the patient understands all the aspects mentioned in the leaflet.
I'm just going to go through.
Not very good. Using all these, as a translator and interpreter in public services, there are two approaches you can apply. The mediator approach is to provide cultural explanations to ensure complete. You will probably need to apply both approaches during the same encounter.
This was the way we found, the easiest way we found of actually having them interpret without having a teacher on the other side or anyone to correct, because we want them to interact, but it's quite difficult without having somebody, let's say, on the other side. So I'm not going to go on with this because as you can see, it's almost like module 2 would almost be over. But as you can see, we're trying to incorporate all sorts of different activities. They have to follow through the whole course and they would have some sort of certification for this. One of the problems we're having to deal with now is, for example, we did everything in Spanish. With the theoretical modules, that's fine to translate them, but with the specific ones, for example, in the health one, we had specific protocols about how to access the Spanish health system, for example. And in English, that we would need to localize that. So we're now working on that to see how we would manage that. So to conclude, basically, we try to identify the linguistic needs of languages of lesser diffusion speakers, and we found that, of course, with this type of training, they can start working and have, let's say that we're giving them an opportunity to do something with their language, with their culture. And I think that's really interesting for them. And of course, we're making sure that at least they have some sort of training. And if you want to follow us, dissemination is indeed very difficult. We're trying to keep up with all sorts of social media, but this is very difficult. And of course, it's not interactive enough. We have our website, and we will have the open access course as soon as possible once it's ready, so that you can all look at it. I think that if you're really interested in looking at the material we've already carried out, you can write to me and I can give you access. So that's fine as well. So if anyone's really interested and eager to see it before it's out, we can do that for sure. And that's it. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for giving us this opportunity. So thank you, ENPSIT and Lieven.
You're most welcome, and thank you very much for also an excellent presentation with lots of material. As promised, it was going to be complementary to what Sonja already presented, and both look very, very promising. And I hope that they're inspiring to many different colleagues around Europe and beyond. As I said, we've already used up the scheduled time, but if there are any further questions, I'm sure we can take some of these in the next few minutes if participants are willing and able to stay on. Yes, Morven, please.
Hi, Sonja. Hello, Carmen. Thank you very much for very interesting presentations. Sonja, I have one very specific question. The storytelling idea for teaching ethics or looking at ethics, very interesting. I was wondering, how many potential pathways are there? Is it always this, one answer or the other, and therefore it leads me to another one? Or are there, how complicated is it?
It's really, really complicated depending on the level of complexity and depending on the situation. We had for producing the stories and the games, we also had workshops working with students and with people from the field, and we also used it at one of our dissemination activities where we forced everyone to produce their own stories. And these story ports are I can't give you numbers now, I would need to look that up, but some of them are really tricky with plenty of different kinds of decisions you have to take. You can keep, of course, you can keep it easier too and make it shorter, but
it's a very innovative way of looking at, to come away from this, as you said, it's right or it's wrong.
Right, yes. Yeah. It's very if you want to do that, it's good to read up a bit on this storytelling approach. There's plenty of literature on that, and you can find it in the book. There is an article on that, on our experiences with it. And you need to have someone who is technology fit. I didn't mention that, but we did it with Twine. Twine's the program. There are specific programs you can use and that help you, because otherwise if you do it all on your own, I think.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any further questions? Perhaps I have one for the both of you, because you both stress the importance of dissemination as well as the difficulty in getting the word out that this exists. But of course, there is also the idea that you've developed this from a need that you felt yourself, and you are able to use this as well. My question there is, do you have any difficulties in figuring out a long-term plan to integrate all this in a curriculum or a project in terms of outreach or what have you, to make sure that the materials that are being developed will indeed be sustainably used in any possible way beyond the project itself and beyond the first or second year following the project? Yes, perhaps Sonja first.
Yeah, we do have a long-term plan, but it's not backed up with money, so that's always the problem. What we try to do is we use it in class if possible, and we use it for workshops we have with stakeholders in the field. So that's something we try to continue to do. And of course, it would be nice to have a follow-up project, but we all know it's difficult to get a follow-up funding, and you need to have a different kind of angle where you can use what you already have and expand on it. So that's something we're thinking about. We hope that it's spread and that it's used and that we get feedback also by people who use it in the field and for workshops and for whatever. So that's basically, it's some kind of plan, but not fully financed, to be honest.
And
Like
do you yeah,
project.
of course, there's a difference between really having a follow-up project to extend what you already have and simply being able to integrate what you have in any sustainable way as a full-fledged package of itself
Yeah,
within a curriculum or
yeah,
CPD or whatever.
yeah. Integration within our, for my institution, at least it is integrated to a certain degree because we have this special focus on dialogue interpreting. So for us, it might be easier than for some of the colleagues who, for instance, if you only have conference interpreting, you might not have that much time to focus on these topics. So within our own curriculum, it is used, it will be used. Of course, always depending on who teaches what, but yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Carmen, would you care to give us your views?
Well, I think we will definitely use your material, Sonja. So, in both in our masters, because it's very interesting material. We are thinking of integrating, in fact, especially the storytelling, because that's something that we need for our module. So, we will definitely be incorporating it. As far as the outreach, that was one of my main issues and well, challenges. I have been talking with different associations who were also doing their own training. So it seems that lots of people are doing the same things and we're not getting together to find not a proper solution, but a one item that can be reproduced. And we will now be working with those associations. They're two NGOs in Spain, and the idea is to create, so let's say to advance in the course we create to make a better, brilliant one, and for them to use it in their training, the interpreters. So I think in the end, the idea is to get it out there and not just to leave it at university where I'm sure it will just be left there. And we found so much interesting material and it wasn't being used, which is a shame. So we hope to put it out there by, let's say, giving it to associations and, well, expecting them to use it.
Okay. Thank you. Well, at least both of you seem to have a clear plan of trying to continue the work that's already been done and trying to reach out to other stakeholders as well to further join hands. I think that's indeed what is needed, as you rightly say, Carmen. What we have been seeing is that a lot of people have been facing the same needs and have been trying to find solutions independently of each other, whereas it might be more fruitful to join hands. So let this also be an invitation to anyone watching this to get in touch with Carmen or Sonja or both to see whether collaboration could be struck up. Okay, I think we do need to stop here. 15 minutes overtime is still all right, even in football. So definitely in an ENPSIT webinar. Allow me to thank you, both of you, again for taking out the time to be with us. Not only the two of you, of course, all of the participants to join us, and I'm sure this will be inspiring to many watching us live as well as later on as well. Thank you very much. Do enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you again at a next installment of our webinar. You will find an announcement for one of these quite shortly because we are planning to have a next webinar already on the 22nd of January, which will be on a different project, also a European sponsored project. EU WebC will be presented then. So looking forward to see you then or earlier. Bye-bye for now.
Bye. Thanks for the invitation again. Thanks for the comments.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.